Hey, welcome to the CMO Whisper Show. I'm your host, Steve Olensky. Part marketing practitioner, part ad agency veteran, part journalist. I was a writer for Forbes for 10 years. I've had so many insightful conversations over the years with business leaders, to athletes, to celebrities, to, of course, CMOs. The only difference now is instead of sharing those insights through written form, I'm doing it this way. My guest today is Scott Davis, Chief Growth Officer at Prophet. Scott is one of the architects behind Prophet's evolution from a 35-person brand shop into a global growth consultancy with 500 plus people across 16 offices, partnering with CEOs and CMOs who are serious about turning brand into a real growth engine. He leads Prophet's global go-to-market, the CMO practice, and corporate marketing, sitting squarely at the intersection of strategy, execution, and results. Over his career, Scott has worked with some of the most iconic brands on the planet: Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Pfizer, IBM, the NBA, J&J, Hershey's, and if I kept going, we would be here too long. So I'll just say, and more. While also advising PE and VC firms and their portfolios on how to scale with intention. And he's the author of multiple influential books on brand and growth, an adjunct professor at Kellogg, a longtime partner of the ANA, a Forbes columnist, and a trusted voice boards, founders, and operators listen to when growth actually matters. Scott Davis, as I was saying to you off air, one, I'm shocked we have never met before, and two, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Steve. I am shocked too, and I would appreciate if you could share that intro with my wife because she does not believe a thing I do. So very excited to be here.
Oh my God. I've said it hundreds of times. Like, for some reason, people like when I read their intros. I'm like, that's a career. I should just be charging people to read intros.
You have the voice.
Exactly. Okay. We're going to cover a lot, including Super Bowl, which we're recording this the day after. But I want to start with the most recent 2020-25 brand winners and losers, right? Now, you've been writing this for years, this piece. And we can get into the origin of all that if you want to. That'd be great. But I want to start when you look at the 2025 list, the most recent list. What jumped out as different this time around?
Yeah. So thanks for asking. So this is a study I've been doing for 14 years. Lots of brands that I covered. What's interesting is as you write an article like this, and I know you've written a lot for Forbes also, it starts to become a snapshot of the year, of what happened culturally, what happened in society, what happened politically, what happened with brands, obviously. So this was a year where there's a lot. There's a lot of trends, and we'll probably cover this off when we talk the Super Bowl. AI obviously was big. GLP-1s were big. I mean, there's just some trends that you could not avoid. So I'll just give you like some of the highlights. I still saw a lot of inclusivity, which has been a trend for a while, with Sephora and Patagonia, Skims' big announcement of their partnership with Nike, Nike itself investing $2.5 billion in women's sports. I saw other brands leaning out of exclusivity and into inclusivity, which was really cool. Like Victoria's Secret, which is a brand I used to put on my brand losers list for many years, is now one of these inclusive brands that is really reinventing itself and had like a crazy year last year, 183% gain year over year. And Abercrombie, you walked into the stores with a cologne and you walked right out going to throw up somewhere. Now it's a great store. It's modern. It's made for everyone, and it's just totally. So I love that. You had brands that went for pure reinvention last year. Walmart, which is one of my brand winners this year. They now consider themselves an e-commerce tech player first, and then they just happen to sell a lot of stuff in a big box. And that was earmarked by their reclassification on NASDAQ. Hinge is a brand I love following. 27% year over year growth, huge market share, 30 million users. The best thing I love about them, Steve, is their brand mission, their North Star, their purpose is we're designed to be deleted. And that is such a different way of thinking about these dating apps and their overall purpose. I talk about reinvention, the Gap, McDonald's, Coke. I talk a lot about newer brands that I think are here to stay. I talk about Quins, the 100% transparent clothing brand that's online that just has, I think, totally reinvented this world of what consumers are looking for most. They'll pay for it, but they want to understand how you got to that cost. And this transparency model, I've used Quins for several of my other clients, Aura Ring and Whoop. I mean, two biometric and core health market. They just measure every single thing about your body and how it works and how it doesn't work, and it feeds you insights to help you live a healthier life. And then, of course, there's Labubu. So newer brands, and then there's brands that Steve had some bad trust issues. Boeing has been on my list several years now. They just can't get the comms right. When there's a data breach like Wells Fargo had, or
Mhm.
United Health Group, you're gonna end up on the list. Or when you're Southwest Airlines, who was on my winners list for several years, and then you decide to rewire your purpose and kind of reinvent some of the signature policies and some of the things that you promise to your consumers, and try to be like every other airline, you're not going to have a great year. And then finally, the one that I talk about, I don't blame Tylenol for what happened to it. I blame them for the response and how long it took them to respond to the issues that arose from the administration back in September. That was the preamble to getting to the actual winners and losers.
Yes, exactly. Which I want to get to in a second, but
Yeah,
I think it'll help the listeners who are not familiar with the list.
yeah, yeah.
What is it? What are the parameters? What are you judging on? Give us some of that kind of behind the curtain stuff.
Yeah, so this is the study I started when I was writing for Forbes 14 years ago, and quite honestly, it was polling my 600 colleagues around the world. So we have a lot of different offices, a lot of different folks from different generations, and getting their insights on the brands that had the biggest impact on them personally or in the news, culturally, brands that their clients are talking about. They're talking about with their clients, and it just turned into a thing. So as I've continued to do this, I've used my profit family, I've used clients, and I've used a lot of research to get to this list. And all it is a winner is a brand that did something special, different, innovative. It could be an experience, it could be a product, it could be a new channel, it could be a total revitalization, like I talked about earlier, or it could be a total cultural shifter. And then the loser, and I hate that word, but it's just the mere juxtaposition of winner, is a brand that did something that put them on the wrong side of the customer, the wrong side of the
Mm.
consumer, the wrong side of the
Mhm.
news. And generally, when a brand does something to break trust, or whatever the brand promises that they
Right.
made. And I've had, I went back and I did for this interview, a little longitudinal study of the 14 years that I've done this study. And there's been 65 unique brand winners and losers. And the amount of repeat offenders on both the brand loser side, in terms of continuing to come up year after year, but then also a number that have been winners year after year. It's been pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So,
And
uh,
I definitely want to dive deeper into
yeah.
the list as a whole. But let's just look at last year. Go back to that and start
Okay.
with the winning side. Okay, on the winners list, what were the few behaviors or decisions that clearly separated them from everyone else?
So if I think about the winners list overall, they did things that were relevant to consumers. They met consumer needs in ways that their core competitive set could not. They did things to get into the cultural zeitgeist, to make their brand more prominent, and potentially introduce their brand to new consumers or new customers. Innovation is always, I look at some of the brands that won last year. Innovation is always a core hallmark of those that did something really unique and different, and really stood out. And then brands that recognize that brands built in isolation are not going to really succeed longer terms. Brands built with partners and in a larger ecosystem, those are the ones that tend to do well.
Okay, that's great from the winner's perspective. Let's look at the other side. In terms of that, would it be bad execution, bad leadership? How do you summarize those who fall on the bad list, the loser list?
It always starts with bad leadership. So let's be clear. There's choices that have been made that I imagine leaders will look back. Some will, and say that was just a bad choice that we made that affected our customer base, our employee base, and ultimately it eroded trust. Sometimes you could be on this brand loser list if you're just going against the cultural, up current, and you're doing something that is not in favor. A lot of us are looking for brands that are more aligned with our values than ever before. And other times you just totally just break the promise. Like you did something that just like it's just so off quote unquote brand for your brand that it leaves consumers and customers with their scratching their heads wondering why.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. Yeah, we could talk about that for sure. Okay, if I'm a CMO and I'm listening, and it's the early part of 2026 as we're recording this, and I'm wondering, are we quietly drifting toward the loser list? What are some early warning signs you would give them to be on the lookout for?
Yeah, I would, as I look at both the winner and the loser list, I would be ridiculously clear about what my brand promise is and what you should expect. I always talk about this with my clients. The easiest way to define brand is a unique and relevant promise made and an exceptional experience delivered. That's it. Get your promise right, get your experience delivered right, and you've got a great brand. Either of those fall apart, you're in trouble. And so I would say many of these lost sight of what the promise was and then probably delivered an underwhelming experience on the other side. So I would say that I would say that's number one. Number two is make sure your employees are clear on what the promise is and what they're expected to deliver on that promise. Whether it's a physical, whether it's physical or a service, or online, offline, be crystal clear, and then continue to have like a rolling thunder of moves that affirm and reaffirm your promise that you're making to the world.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's take a holistic look back at the whole time you've been doing this. I think you said 12 or 13 years, correct? This
Yeah, yeah.
list. First question, when you looked the 30,000 holistic view, what hasn't changed about what makes brands win?
Innovation has not changed at all. I look at some of the tech winners. I look at the consumer winners. I look at the entertainment, media, or business, retail. All of them have won in that year for something they did from either an innovation perspective, a new experience perspective, or kind of an expansion into a new category perspective. So innovation has always been at the forefront. Developing experiences that are remarkable, especially as we've moved into more. When I did 14 years ago, is a little bit more physical. Then we had this bridge period where it's physical digital. Now it's obviously much more digitally oriented. And these brands have all moved, and they've made the right kinds of moves, and they've understood the incredible balance that they have to have with consumers that are expecting seamless, frictionless experiences across all of these. And then, quite honestly, continue to invent and reinvent yourself and look at what's next and be prepared for that next wave of innovation, that next wave of consumer needs, that next wave of change and shifts in your category. And so every one of these, I look at the 37 winners over
Yeah,
time. Again, many multiple winners just continue. I mean, Netflix in 2013 was the winner because of the move they made from mail to streaming, and obviously they continue to be a winner for continuing to innovate. Same with
right.
Microsoft, Samsung, and several others.
Okay, kind of conversely to that, what has changed dramatically over those decade plus years little twist though, what has changed dramatically over these years, but CMOs still underestimate today.
Yeah, I think CMOs underestimate that the promise that they made, and I'm going to use Target as an example. Beloved Target, I still love Target as a brand, but I think they underestimate the idea that that brand halo that was created in the Target years. I'm going to just use them as an example.
Hmm.
Will carry them into the next horizon of growth and the next horizon of consumers that engage with that brand, and that's just not the case. And so I think that is something that you have to continue to think about. You can call it your brand promise, your brand purpose, your brand North Star, your brand mission, whatever you want to call it. You have to continuously look at that and continuously reinvent. When you break promises like Facebook and Meta, which has continuously appeared on my list, and a few others you could imagine, you have to look at the fundamental reasons why trust is so low, why trust in Facebook is in the 20% levels. Like, what is it about it? And are you going to do something differently? And I mean, those are, again, to your earlier point, these are leadership choices, and your employees, and then often the market will just follow those leadership choices.
Yeah, to me, it's always been, and I talk like you, I talk to, my whole career has been basically been talking to CMOs, and there's some, and I'm not going to get all the traits here, but that I see, but chief among them is, keep things simple, get out of your own way, right? And you got to have that really honest lens, like you were just talking about, going, is this working or do I want it to work? And there's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Walmart is a great example. And I mentioned them earlier of a brand loser. This was back in pre 2017. It's just a big warehouse with terrible customer service, and just it wasn't made for every consumer, obviously. And they just kind of jumped on the, I'll just say, Amazon led tech wagon
Mm,
and continuously reinventing themselves every single year to basically, I would say they're almost a category of one next to Amazon, in the big box space. And if anybody's going to take on Amazon, it's going to be Walmart. What was cool in doing this analysis, there was some losers that became winners, and then there were some winners that became losers over the 14 years, and
mm.
and for some of them for very obvious reasons.
Right, right. And how fine is that line? I think some people would wonder, Scott, between winners and
I'll
losers.
give you a great example, Steve.
Okay.
The fine line last year, Duolingo was a brand winner. It crushed. I'm not going to say it came out of nowhere, but it became a cultural phenomenon in the zeitgeist, and in learning new languages, and doing it on your time. And it was very human centered, and humanity is such a big part, and human centricity is such a big part of brands today. And then last May, they introduced a more profound AI interface, and Duolingo lost a lot of that humanity and that personalization and this feeling of I'm in it with this company together. We're going to figure out and crack the code on this language. And they ended up as a brand loser this year. That's in 12 months. 12 months. It could go really fast the other way. So you have to be very careful.
Is the opposite true? Can it go very fast the other way to be on a winner side, or does it take longer?
It takes a little longer. You got to
Yeah.
if you're trying to truly transform and be a different kind of brand, sort of what McDonald's was going through and a few other stalwart brands. It's going to take a little while to get back some of that legacy attributes that you once owned, and also
Yeah.
get to a new generation of buyers, right? That really don't know that much about you.
I'm constantly fascinated by when you and I, we look at through the same lens of kind of that brand's doing really great. It ain't broken. Why the hell are you trying to fix it?
Yeah.
It just blows my mind.
I will give you one that I think has made really quick strides, especially for the scale of a top 5 QSR. It's Starbucks. Starbucks in the last, before last year, before new leadership came in, it was a highly commoditized, poor in-store service, oversaturated menu options. And it was just not what you and I remember kind of growing up, that third destination. And it lost a lot of that brand mojo. Introduced new leadership, went back to its roots, cleaned up the menu board, rewired the stores to become that third place.
Yep.
Writing a little nice note on your cup every single day, doing some phenomenal advertising. And I would say Starbucks is one of those that you asked that question, this is moving the Titanic. The Titanic just moved. It moved over the last 2 years, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I remain a Starbucks fan.
Understood. Okay. We're recording this the Monday after the Super Bowl. And every year we hear the same thing. Nothing stood out, blah, blah, blah. From a brand perspective, what are people missing when they judge Super Bowl ads too quickly?
Well, I think first of all, I'm like you. I'm a consumer. I'm always excited, curious. Never wanted to get off the couch. I don't want to miss that cultural moment. But deep in my heart, I am a brand nerd and a brand consultant. So I'm really listening with intent and watching with intent as I see each of these brands having their moment. The dirty little secret that I do know in the back of my mind is brand trust is at an all-time low, as I mentioned earlier, and that at any given point, the consideration set for the category your brand lives in, only 1% of the total addressable market is even thinking about buying in your category. So these, you go into these knowing that you're probably not going to impact sales, but you're going to create conversation, and you're going to open eyes, and you're going to probably create awareness that didn't exist before. So to me, what I learned a lot about yesterday, and I'm a student of this with brand, is what some of these health and wellness brands are doing. It's just been a big movement trying to help us change our lifestyles in ways that we have not seen before. They're not like the old drug ads that just went on and on and on. Now one of them, Wegovy, went on a little too long yesterday with all the issues tied to it. But I love that. I love this idea of empowering us to take control of our health and our wellness, and that gets back to my brand winners. I think we learned a lot about AI yesterday, and it was kind of AI as product, AI as production, AI is friend and partner, AI is scary. But if you didn't have a clear understanding of all the different ways AI is going to impact your life, mostly as a consumer, you saw some as a business, you did yesterday. And that was I think it was a learning, awakening moment. And by the way, I thought Anthropic going after OpenAI was brilliant. I think they put this little seed of doubt in our minds that is OpenAI, ChatGPT going to soon be an advertiser led? And are they going to sell that data too? And is it going to be like some of this, the social media? So I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And then there's always a place, Steve, for humor, nostalgia, and we saw a lot of that in spades. Again, we'll drive sales tomorrow. No, but you and I are talking about those brands, and I know billions of people listen to this, so we are creating awareness for those companies as we speak.
So when the ads do work, right? Super Bowl ads, because let's face it, they're not cheap, right? And they could literally make or break some brands.
Yep.
When they do work, aside from humor and being funny and emotional and touching on the heartstrings, what are they usually doing right? Or is it being funny and emotional and just causing people to think? And what makes the Super Bowl ad work, I guess, is what I'm asking.
One, is it something that's memorable that you will talk about tomorrow morning, quote unquote, around the coffee cooler, the water cooler? Two, is it something that you were already interested in and you just learned something new about it? Is it the total addressable market or the serviceable addressable market? Is it the total addressable market? And if that person is in the market for that product or brand, it's obviously kismet, perfect timing. And then obviously, if there's an action step to take, that's why I loved a lot of the GLP-1s. What they did is we had something to go do as an action coming out of it, either to learn more or to contact or to take action. And some of them, like the GLP-1s 2 years ago, for most of us, they seemed inaccessible. And what we learned yesterday, one, they don't seem as expensive as they were. And two, they now are coming in pill form, because I think the needles is what scared everybody off of them.
Yep.
Over the last few years.
I completely agree. When it's that change alone, literally from the type of the way you can take the medicine, it could be, pun intended, a game changer.
A game changer, 100%.
So is the real value of the Super Bowl, is it still the spot itself? Is it how brands activate before, during, after the game? Is it all of the above, none of the above? What's the real value of a Super Bowl spot in your opinion?
So I honestly, it's almost like speaking at a conference, Steve. I think the least valuable part is that person getting on stage. It's all the promotion before they get on stage, and all the publicity and all the kind of interviews they're doing before they get on stage. And then it's everything that happens afterwards, all the follow through, all the continuous for these ads, all the follow through on these ads and continue to run. Like a lot of these ads, this was the beginning. Now they go into the Olympics, then they go into the World Cup, then they continue on this. In the past, it was one and done. Now it's this continuous stream, this continuous journey of these ads. We'll see them throughout the year in different situations. So it's not just, it's in the old days, we had that $5 million and we spent it and prayed that it worked. We're not so worried that maybe it did or did not work on that single night, or you
Right.
did or did not see it on that single night.
Right. Exactly. So it's not a question of not doing, Super Bowl, because we all know there are big brands, and the first one that comes to mind is MasterCard. And I know that now former CMO of MasterCard, Raja, real well, that as far as I remember, they've never done a Super Bowl ad.
Right. And for many brands, that what's the point? Their awareness levels are at 100%. Everybody understands what their brand does or does not do. They have much better ways of engaging with their consumers or their customers. And a lot of times, like when Ford ran their big spot last year, it's not for you and I to go out and buy a new Ford Explorer. It's for their employee base to feel the pride. It's for their shareholders to know they made a smart investment. And probably third on the list is to actually get a new consumer into a dealership.
Yep, exactly. Okay, I want to pivot to something I think was pretty recent about the 6 keys to CMO success in 2026. And I'll lay out the 6 just at a high level, and then we'll get into the list. Marketing as a growth accelerator, build a CMO CEO relationship, integrate brand and demand, connect inside and outside, span the silos, and rethink modern maturity for an AI-driven future. First question, which one of those do CMOs say they believe in, but struggle the most to actually execute?
Well, that's a great question. I would say the being a growth catalyst and the reputation builder and this kind of dual threat that CEOs are looking for remains the great challenge. And
Mm,
it's a reality in our CMO world that we're expected to do both. And when we are not driving the brand and the reputation like we should, it's the finger of shame. If we're not driving the growth, it's the finger of blame.
yeah.
And so it's a really tricky position to be. But when you get it right, like you mentioned, Raja, and there's many CMOs that have done a great job. You, as I talk about in one of my books, you no longer are at the kids table. You're at the adult table. You are working with the rest of the C-suite, with the CEO, and you are helping to drive and articulate that growth agenda, and then your specific role in driving that agenda.
Yeah.
One of my favorite CMOs just retired recently, Ann Loons at Adobe.
Hmm.
I interviewed her for my book called The Shift, and she told me the way she gained credibility, which I give this advice often to my CMO friends, as the enterprise CMO, was to take on one or two P&Ls or BUs and actually do both jobs at once. And I've seen this at a number of different companies. So she took on, I think, the education P&L and maybe healthcare, and she showed she practiced what she preached. What she did at the
Hmm.
enterprise CMO level for the entire organization, she also did at the BU level, and she gained that credibility across the silos, across the businesses, and across the functions. That's not always possible. It's one of those unicorn CMOs, but it's that idea, it's that
Yeah.
mindset. Act as an operator, think in terms of how the BU's thinking, think in terms of how the customer's thinking, think in terms of how the sales force is thinking, and really work your way across those silos.
I think it's great advice. I mean, obviously, that's a very big brand with a lot of BUs. Some listening may go, "Well, that's great, but I'm a small company." Okay, still take ownership or talk to the CFO, talk to the BU leaders, right? To get involved, at least get on their radar, right?
Yeah, I mean, my very first job was with P&G, and I worked on liquid detergents, liquid Tide and Era and Cheer and all those.
Hmm.
And even back then at P&G, I recognized that me getting that product on the shelf was dependent on manufacturing, was dependent on distribution, was dependent on the sales force, was dependent on the rest of the marketing team, was dependent on the retailer playing ball. It was like it's a team sport. And I think too many times marketers operate in a silo, and they do their marketing thing. And
Hmm.
no disrespect, there's some great marketers that are much more focused on small ad marketing, and that may work in their companies. But I think the CMOs that really make a difference are the ones that focus on big ad marketing and think about the growth of the business, which leads into this CEO, CMO, the very first one you mentioned, of building that bridge and building that trust.
Yeah. Of the six, Scott, is there any if a CMO, I can't do all six. What's one or two should I focus on?
If you're not focusing on the role of AI in your CMO world, and we're in an algorithm curated culture, the checkouts can be instantaneous. Every interaction is shoppable. If you're not thinking about how this all fits into your game plan, and you haven't moved beyond integrating AI into your workflows to make them more seamless and maybe more agile and maybe a little bit more efficient, I think you're in trouble. So because the CEO in particular, but even the board, is looking for every leadership team and every functional area to
Mm.
figure out how AI is going to make them better. And I think the first move is, and I have a Fortune 100 company right now where the mandate from the board for marketing is 30% of your cost as a cost center will be gone within 3 years, replaced by AI. Because as a senior marketer, how do I even get my head around that? And what is the first move that I make? How do I move from efficiency and optimization and speed to actually driving growth, which is all that really my CEO cares about if I have that kind of relationship?
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Okay, we're looking at the time. I want to wrap up with the random five, which, if you're familiar with my show, and last couple episodes I haven't done it for whatever reason. I think I just kind of lost sight of it. The return of the random five, Scout. You should be honored. You're the first one who's returning
I
it.
feel,
And
I
these
feel
are
honored.
five, five random personal get to know you questions. And if you're game, here we go.
Do it.
If your leadership style were a playlist, what's one song that absolutely belongs on it?
Jack Johnson, Better Together.
I think it pretty much speaks for itself, right? There you go.
It does.
Yeah. I don't think we need to elaborate. Okay, next one. What's the weirdest or most random skill you have that has absolutely nothing to do with your job?
Oh, the weirdest or randomest skill. I can because I've been to, I don't know, it's closer to 1,000, or I could name concerts from my favorite bands going back to the 70s and 80s, locations, where they played, who
Don't
played,
don't say
maybe
set.
even who the
Don't,
opening act was.
I was going to say, or don't say set list. You know,
Some I do know a set list, but we won't go there. That will take a long time. But yep.
that's awesome. I love that. Okay, next, what is your quote go-to comfort rewatch? The show or movie you put on when you don't want to think? You've seen it a million times, but it doesn't matter.
So on my own, it would probably be The Office. With my wife, it would probably be a show called New Girl. Believe it or not. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Number 4, who's someone outside of marketing that inspires you and why?
That is a great question. Somebody outside of marketing that inspires me. Okay, I'm going to have to take a pause here.
Okay.
You stunned me with that one. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
We can say that. We can say that for part 2 because we will have a part 2 of this of our conversation. Last one. If someone made a movie about your life, what would the title be, and who is playing you?
Well, I'm gonna steal a title from actually probably my favorite movie of all time, because I do feel like this is part of my life. It's called Field of Dreams, which I do know every line of that movie, and I'll take the easy out and just call Kevin Costner as the guy. I'm just gonna take the easy one.
No worries. Everything works. Listen, Scott Davis, my friend, I knew this time would fly by. I think we're just scratching the surface on future episodes and things outside of our podcast. And I'll leave it at that as a tease for the audience. How's that?
I'm looking forward to it, Steve.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for taking the time.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the CMO Whisperer Show. I hope you shared this episode with your friends. And if you have not already, please subscribe to be kept up to date on all the latest episodes. And if you're so inclined, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.